Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I'm very pleased to be back in studio. And I'm joined by a man who's been selling Colleen Rooney's stories to the Sun. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Is that where I pull off my mask to reveal that it was Vardy the whole time?
Yeah,
or am I pulling off
Vardy.
Vardy's mask to reveal it was me the whole time?
I don't know.
Okay.
Either way, it's a good side business we got going here.
Thank you for remembering Jamie Vardy's wife's first name, because I forgot it briefly, and I did sort of imply that it was Jamie Vardy.
Colleen will never forget Jamie Vardy's wife.
Colleen Rooney's name I will never forget after this revelation.
Oh, if you don't know what we're talking about, we're not going to get into it, right? That's not really it's not really our area.
I want to do a 4-hour show about it, but I'm assuming that will be what the Cooligans are going to do.
I feel like the Cooligans have got this one.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll watch their show on Freebird this
They're
week.
going to break that thing down like this is a Pruder film. The way we break down tactics, they're going to break down this series of events.
So with this emoji, what she's saying is...
It's funny because it feels like a thing that could happen.
Today is a listener question special.
Yes, it is.
We have many, many questions.
We really do.
I'm excited
It's
to
almost
answer,
like we haven't done this in a while.
Right? I'm excited to answer all of them. Before we get to all the listener questions, there's a lot of US men's national team questions. A lot of people have questions about Berhalter and everything that's going on. Jill Ellis is finally, her reign is over.
Her reign is over.
Her reign is over. I mean, that's what the rest of the world will be celebrating.
Yeah.
Because after the final game against Korea, which ended 1-1, but it kind of didn't matter because she ends her US women's national team.
That record is insane.
Coaching career with 106 wins and a smaller number, but more impressive, 2 World Cups.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And
2 World Cups.
And wasn't it something of... Do you have the whole record right in front of you?
I don't.
It was something like 106 wins, like 9 losses and 12 draws.
Yeah.
Or just something that's like, that's not a sign of a balanced competition. No.
There were celebrations in Germany, in France, in every other women's soccer powerhouse nation. It was like at the end of Return of the Jedi. Everybody was like the Ewoks, setting off fireworks.
Yep. Except maybe in the US. I'm not sure if...
Oh, no, not in the US.
We set off like mournful fireworks to say goodbye to a wonderful coach who, as you said, has won.
We're like, damn, the Death Star was useful.
Oh, we're the baddies in this scenario?
I mean...
Oh, well. But it was a nice gesture.
The more you tighten your grip, the more World Cups you seem to actually win.
Is that what the moral was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't don't put your hands out there because they always get cut off. That seems to happen a lot in the Star Wars movies. All right. But it was a very nice gesture that there was like the fan boards where people could write their notes to Jill Ellis. Those were very well documented and very, very sweet. But it was just a nice reminder. This World Cup, I think, like celebration series, homecoming series, the victory tour was
homecoming.
More. Yeah, it's all the same.
I mean, they were kind of parades.
Yeah. It meant more to me this time. One, because I feel like I cared more about this team. I think I've talked about that previously, but also because it's Jill Ellis saying goodbye. Yeah. So it had a bit more significance to it.
I'll be honest, I struggle to get excited about the victory tour because it's really like a thing in the player CBA to cash in and make some money after winning the World Cup. Right? They deserve the money, but I'm not interested in those games. No, those games are not doing anything for the future.
That's what I mean. It's like it wasn't I was watching it for tactics and to see the nuances of the games. It was like watching The Office for the 15th time in a row. It's just sort of like, this is just kind of nice. It's just nice to see the US women coached by Jill Ellis.
But now that Jill Ellis has victoriously stepped down, we can start to look towards the future. We know Kate Margraf has been installed as the general manager. The coaching search is afoot. There was some news, over a week ago now, that there was an approach made for the Arsenal coach, Joe Montemurro, who's an Australian guy who's been coaching the Arsenal team in the Women's Super League over in England. And Joe Montemurro was interested. Arsenal said, he just signed a new contract. You can't talk to him.
Right. We should add, it wasn't as though US Soccer reached out to say we definitely want to hire him. It was more of a...
Can we have a conversation?
We're looking at candidates. We want to talk to him. And Arsenal basically said, no, you may not talk to him.
He just signed a new contract. We've got... If you look at the Arsenal team, there's Miedema, we were really excited about during the World Cup, the striker. Danielle van der Donk, Kim Little, Jordan Noobs, Beth Mead. They just won the league last year. I think they're joint top this year after 3 games in. Arsenal are very serious, and part of being very serious is we don't let our coach go and work for the US women's national team.
Yeah. But this is kind of representative of the issue that Kate Margraf is going to have to deal with. Of you've got various leagues competing at various times, various national team managers committed to gigs medium term, long term. Yeah. So trying to find the best possible hire is that much more challenging. To be honest, it's like it's more challenging than I guess I thought it would be, because to me it was like the U.S.
Did
women's.
You think like everybody would want to work on the Death Star?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Or be in charge of the Death Star. Like, yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. But and I thought about it more of a like, because they're so head and shoulders above, that more people would want to work. But in reality, there's so much less money involved in the women's game that I think those people who could sort of like turn heads to get that gig already are kind of tied down by lucrative contracts, and so it does make that search, I think, that much harder. One
thing that just knowing that the US was interested in Joe Montemurro, it's kind of, in my head, opened up the whole thing, right? Because when everybody was talking about potential candidates, we were only talking about NWSL coaches, right? And honestly, in my head, I had unconsciously assumed American woman, right? Not Australian man working in England. Like, it really makes me think that this coach could come from anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think the American woman aspect is that there are a few of them.
Stay away from me. Isn't that the song?
That is not a great song to sing when you're talking about the coaching search.
I guess not. So Arsenal says.
Yeah, I like that you're just now riffing on anything that triggered. You're Robin Williams is what you're doing. Anything that remotely connects, you're just going to start doing.
And I think he would sound a little bit like this. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm just excited to be back in studio.
There we go. That makes sense. No, but I think there was only one candidate who pulled herself out of contention, or like one shortlisted candidate theoretically. So it's also representative of the issue of not having as many women's coaches involved in the game, which is something Meg Linehan and I talked about when she was last on the show, and hopefully we'll have her on the show very soon.
You sure did. Yeah, Meg was good when she was on the show. Who was it that ruled himself out?
I forget.
That's why you didn't say
Laura Harvey, maybe?
Okay.
Was that a coach?
Could be. That is a coach.
Yes.
All right. You ready to answer some listener questions? Now that I've exposed the gap in your memory.
That works.
Hopefully you remember lots of other things.
Well, she ruled herself out. Why should I? I'm not thinking about her anymore. I'm moving on to the possibilities. I also think I called... I think I said Paul Carr instead of Paul Riley in that interview. So there you go. Yeah,
Meg politely didn't correct you, and you corrected yourself.
I did.
I enjoyed Meg's faith in you to catch your own mistake. All right, today's first question comes from Jay Meadows. It's about the US men's national team. Jay says, with the fairly low cost and the location for the CONCACAF Nations League games in DC this Friday against Cuba and Orlando next month against Canada, are we seeing a change in US soccer's idea of where we should be playing games? Because these games are both in soccer-specific stadiums. These are MLS stadiums, right? When there are NFL-sized stadiums nearby. Also, the cost of admission is lower. I checked tickets for the Cuba game. $26, right? Or is this something that is being forced by CONCACAF?
I doubt it's being forced by CONCACAF, because I don't think...
No, you can choose your venue in your federation.
What do you mean? Yeah. So I'm saying I doubt CONCACAF was saying, like, you have to do it here or there. I think it's probably representative of where the U.S. men's national team is right now, also where some of their opponents are. But I do think it's an element... At least a significant element of it is like fiscal, in that to rent an NFL stadium requires more security. It's a bigger space. You have to deal with bigger vendors or more vendors. And so I think if you're doing a smaller field like Audi Field, it's cheaper because it's not this massive stadium that also has like NFL teams playing there.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be a little bit smaller, so a little bit more cost effective for the federation.
I have a different take.
What you got?
Because I went back and looked at World Cup qualifying. When we got to the Hex, when the games are serious and points are on the line, every game was at a smaller MLS stadium.
Interesting.
Right? It was like at MAPFRE, the Columbus Stadium, obviously, or it was in Orlando. Here's what I think US soccer does. I think for friendlies, as Jurgen Klinsmann noted in that interview with Hercules Gomez that we'll talk about later, friendlies are all about revenue for the United States, right? So that's why they're in these massive stadiums and ticket prices are really high. They're just about trying to make as much money as possible. I think when points are on the line, I do think maybe the coach has some input and the federation takes the game more seriously, and it's more important to have like a full stadium of 20-something thousand and then hopefully US fans, whereas that's not so important when we're doing the cash grab friendlies. So I think it's like the venues are more about creating a good atmosphere for the game.
I like that we have the Victory Tour and cash grab friendlies. That's a weird way that they chose to brand it, but they did, and I guess all credit.
What do you think of my theory?
I think that probably makes sense.
Yeah, and it is backed up by the World Cup qualification games being at MLS stadiums.
This is representative of where I am in terms of like my belief in soccer hierarchy at the moment. It still requires me to believe that U.S. soccer did something for the benefit of the fans and the team, and I have I have an instant reaction to that, which is why when you said I was like, no, come on, they just want to make money. But you're probably right that it's also not great optics, metrics, what have you, for even like an 18,000 seat stadium to be like only 2/3 full, that's still not very great. So lowering the prices to get more people in, to get a better atmosphere, to get a better marketable product probably all makes sense.
And then the other thing is sometimes you play in an NFL stadium, you get that weird like overlaid grass that like isn't a very good surface and isn't conducive to a good game. Like if we're taking these, proper FIFA competitions like the CONCACAF Nations League or World Cup qualifying, if you're taking those seriously, you're better off on a proper grass field rather than a cobbled together field where someone's ankle might get caught under a divot.
I mean, do you forget the beautiful field that was laid down at the Alamo Dome? Everyone's favorite field ever?
I do not.
That was such a garbage decision, garbage field, but a decent result, so it all counts.
You ready for the next question?
Let's do it.
'Cause we have a lot. We're gonna burn through these. Would you like to ask it, or would you like me to ask
I'll ask you because it's hard.
Okay.
Brian asks, how are we definably better after one almost full year under the Berhalter tenure?
And there's definitely some skepticism in the way. I read this question with how are we better? You know what I'm saying?
Definably better.
I think it's like asking for prove it.
Well, yes, but I
will answer this, by the way.
But I appreciate Brian's question because it's a thing I struggle with. Is to say how are we better allows you to say we figured out some things and there's movement here and this person can be a number 10, whatever. But you don't really get into the specificity of how things are improving, which to be honest is one of my frustrations with Greg Berhalter is we haven't heard him talk about how they're demonstrably better, things that we can observe that show that we've developed. So I get where this question is coming from. Hopefully we have some answers. We'll find out.
Well, here's my answer. We do have a clear style of play that we're working toward. We definitely weren't able to say that under the Saracen era. Right? It was just here's a bunch of players, good luck. We weren't even able to say that under the Klinsmann era because there wasn't really a style of play beyond sort of try hard.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I honestly think that even though we're not there yet, having a style of play that you can now say, this is the way the US men's national team plays, this is what we're working towards, I think that is definably better than not having that style of play. But then again, we've had this conversation before. It depends on your level of patience, right? I'm prepared to wait for this whole thing to click into place by the time World Cup qualifying starts. And you do see signs of this possession game working in fits and starts, right? And you can be frustrated that we tried to play at the back against Mexico and maybe that's not a good use of a game against Mexico when there's pride on the line and all that sort of stuff. But then you see the game against Uruguay and we were much better in possession and looked like a team that could really move the ball and make things happen. So I would say there are signs of progress. And then you've got the young players coming. I think we're definably better. This isn't even something Berhalter's done, but just having guys like Pulisic and McKenneys having a lot of international experience. And then hopefully we're going to add Serginho Dest and Tyler Adams and all that sort of stuff. I feel much better about the US men's national team than I did a year or two ago.
I thought about those same things. My question then is, does it matter at all that those players were playing under Saracen as well and under Klinsmann before him?
Well, they weren't, right?
Pulisic was. McKenneys was.
McKenneys wasn't playing under
Saracen.
Klinsmann. He did play under Saracen, No, it matters because it matters to me that they're in a style under Berhalter, right? McKenneys played under Saracen. It was always just, here's a bunch of players. Here's Anthony Robinson, see what he can do.
To clarify, that wasn't me debating, that was me genuinely asking, because that was the reason why I didn't put them on there, is because I couldn't really say, we've established them as USMNT players because they kind of already had. But there's, I guess, to your point, a difference between when they first appeared and when they became established players for the team.
I mean, I could tell you now what McKenneys' role is, right? It's to be the number 8 in a 3-man midfield, and he's the guy that joins the attack but also sits back a little alongside the holding midfielder. You know what I mean? I can tell you this is what McKenneys' job is for the US men's national team.
Again, not trying to debate, although this one is more of a question for you. But I struggled with this as well, but didn't we kind of assume that was always going to be his role regardless of who the manager was?
People have talked about him as a number 6, or maybe he'd play holding, or we didn't even know what shape we were going to... Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him...
Did you just trump that one? You're people talking about him as a number 6 when it was you specifically talking about him as a number 6?
He was could have been the holding midfielder under Saracen, for example. We know now this is what Coach Greg Berhalter wants him to do.
All right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you on that one. I have a few other ones that are for me, we have an established number 1 goalkeeper, which is not a thing we have had since Tim Howard was in his prime.
Yep.
Even Tim Howard, while still playing for the national team, after I forget, was it the adductor or abductor? Either way, when he couldn't take goal kicks, and it felt maybe we're past it a little bit. But is it Guzan? Is it somebody else? Is it Horvath? Now I do feel like we have that established goalkeeper, and I think a lot of that is the relationship with Berhalter in a positive way. I think that Berhalter has kind of believed in him, backed him, encouraged him to do new things, and then obviously him maturing at Dusseldorf has helped.
I wish we had an established centre-back pairing. It still seems a lot of chopping and changing between Miazga, Long, Brooks when he's healthy.
The Brooks injury
Walker
aspect.
Zimmerman and so on and so on. Yeah.
Because I think we believe it's Brooks, and then we think it's probably like a couple other people, but Brooks not being there so regularly has made that difficult.
Yeah.
I do think this is a positive and a negative, but I do think it helps us be better and makes us look better that Berhalter has his group. It's like, it's not necessarily a thing that then we're like, and so we are a better team, but I think it's clear to me that some members of the group, quote unquote, like are embracing the roles that they've been given. To your point, there's a style. And so you look at the emergence of Tim Ream for the national team, of Jordan Morris, Reggie Cannon, Paul Arriola, Sebastian Lletget, all players who I think are positioned to do bigger things for the U.S. national team under Berhalter than I think they would have done under another national team manager.
I think part of this, maybe one way we're definably better, is Berhalter is very specifically picking players that fit his system, as opposed to just picking players and trying to jam them in there, which, naming no names, but a certain German coach would pick players and try and jam them in there. One thing I'd add is we now have a plethora of right-backs.
We do.
Do you remember when we had a massive shortage?
Well, for now, we might have one fewer in a month or so.
Right, yeah, but we've got Yedlin, Reggie Cannon, Nick Lima, maybe Serginho Dest, like maybe Tyler Adams, if you like him in that like hybrid role. We suddenly have no shortage of right-backs.
It's like every...
The days of missing Steve Cherundolo are longer.
Exactly, but like there's these weird like World Cup cycles aspects to positions that we had Cherundolo, then we didn't, and suddenly it was like we have no right backs, and now we do. But then there was a period when we had no center backs. There was a period when we had no strikers, which is also now.
Josh Sargent is on the way.
He is, but I will say that I think this makes us definably better is in knowing what we're definably not good at.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like knowing what your vulnerabilities are makes you a stronger competitor because you know either how to deal with those vulnerabilities or what you need to work on to improve.
Yep.
And I think we know where our biggest areas of vulnerability are. I would say they're wide attackers. I would say there are strikers. Maybe it's like our emerging number sixes could be included in there as well. Maybe center backs, although I think that's more so due to injury. But we know vulnerabilities primarily in the attack, and we know that we need to kind of look at other options, continue to encourage other options. And for Berhalter, I would imagine fluctuate a little bit in what you're trying to do to see if maybe this little tactical adjustment or nuance changes the effectiveness of our attacking shape.
I think the other thing is you might be listening to this thinking, well, you guys are setting a very low bar for how we are definably better.
Yeah.
I would remind you that we failed to qualify for a World Cup and then spent a year kind of just blindly poking around in the wilderness. So the bar was already set very low for us to be definably better.
I'll say this, the height of this Erection era, like the best game we played, like, oh, we drew France, that's really exciting. We drew Portugal, that's exciting. I would trade that in a heartbeat for like a bad game by the U.S. under Berhalter, because at least it's not a placeholder. It feels like, okay, we know this is our manager.
We know what we're trying to do.
If we believe that this person is going to take us to the next World Cup, then we have to see this as like development and change and like how are we learning more about this team rather than like, okay, well, let's just wait and see what happens. That's great. We tied this team, but does it really matter? Is this going to have any impact on what happens in the future? I don't know. That year was not fun.
So there we go. We are definably better because it's no longer 2018.
Yeah.
Many more questions to get to, but first, today's Total Soccer show is sponsored by Hims, a new wellness brand for men.
That's right. With age comes wisdom.
New? I feel like we've read this ad quite a lot.
I mean, new comparison to like Coca-Cola.
There we go.
With age comes wisdom, and then you can answer questions like Dale just posed to me with that. But getting older can also be a downer in one area specifically. 40% of men by age 40 struggle from not being able to get and maintain an erection. So not really a problem for the members of the current U.S. men's national team squad, statistically speaking. But once they hit 40, it very well could be.
Is that why most soccer players retire?
Yes, exactly. They got to focus on other aspects. That's what it is. Because it's by the age of 40. Yeah. So maybe as you need to get a little bit closer to that one, you fall off of your national team appearances.
So you don't have to turn to any sort of weird solutions like you would have maybe if you played for Milan in the early 2000s. No expensive pills or injections where you definitely don't want injections.
Yes.
Instead, just check out Hims.
Ryan and I talked about that at length on the weekend review, and I don't really want to go back to injections in areas where I don't want there to be an injection. Instead, as you said, connects with real doctors and FDA-approved pharmaceutical products, to treat ED. You have prescription solutions backed by science as opposed to snake oil and injections backed by nothing and pain, respectively.
Pain.
Yeah.
The doctor's like, the pain might help. It might motivate you. That's not how it works.
To that I quote Brian Regan, if the doctor says you're going to feel some pressure, buckle up.
So it's basically telemedicine for the initial sort of consult. You don't have to go and wait in a waiting room and, talk to a doctor about a really
There's no chance of not waiting. That's the name of the room.
Thanks, Jerry Seinfeld. Yep. Is that a Seinfeld bit?
It is indeed.
And then you get the medication.
You do.
You get the medication, which is the solution.
Mm-hmm. So you can try HIMS today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to forhims.com/totalsoccered. That's forhims.com/totalsoccered. One more time, forhims.com/totalsoccered.
Prescription products are subject to doctor approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. See the website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds of, I assume, dollars if you went in person to the doctor's office with the waiting room or to a pharmacy. Instead, go to forhims.com/totalsoccered.
All right, I'm going to try to do this in my best radio ad read voice, and then we'll move on. All right, you ready? So, forhims.com/totalsoccered. Prescription products are subject to doctor approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if prescription is appropriate. See website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went to a doctor in person. I almost had it, but I couldn't get it in the end.
In the TV ad, this is when there'd be lots of smiling people.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go back to remember, that's forhims.com/totalsoccered. Thank you to HIMS for sponsoring today's episode. More listener questions, Mr. Grove?
Yeah, let's go to Richard Rolson's question. Richard says, I recently watched the Hercules Gomez interview with Jurgen Klinsmann. If you haven't seen this, it was on ESPN FC, right? And was wondering, do you think that Klinsmann might have been a much better general manager or technical director than he was a coach? From what you know of his time with the US men's national team, do you think he would have been better as a GM?
I watched this interview. I then punched myself in the face, and they had the equal response, which it just made me angry. No, I don't think he would have made a better general manager.
Okay, why not?
Do I have to defend myself? Okay, fine. I think it's what you mentioned previously, that he had been there, he had great ideas about how we could play and what we need to do, but I don't feel like Jurgen Klinsmann was ever particularly good at sticking with a concept or sticking with an idea, which is why our tactics inevitably became try hard, run around, have fun, leave it to the players to organize. And so I think he talks a big game.
Michael and Jermaine will sort out the tactics.
I think he talks a big game. I think that's always been listening to that interview, he's saying the same stuff he said when he was applying for the job.
When he said in 2006
when he first got hired. It's just that blew my mind. That and even to the point where some of the points in the interview when there was the question about youth development, and he talked about how we've got players going to college, and it's yes, some, but it's a kind of
not everybody now goes 4 years and starts in MLS.
It's a rarity that a college player ends up making a significant impact down the road. So yes, there are outliers.
First to identify things like Reggie Cannon, where he went for 1 year, which was actually good for his development, right? Then the rest of the time he's with the academy, he's with Dallas.
Yes. Yeah. So that's getting off on a bit of a Klinsmann rant. To go back to the actual question, I don't think he would have been a good GM because from everything we've heard about him when he was in charge of the U.S. men's national team and also as technical director, it changed.
He actually, after his second contract, he actually was. His job title included technical director. He just didn't do a lot of technical directing.
Well, he didn't, but what he would do was say, hey, I want to change this, or we're going to try this, or we're going to do yoga today. And it was just so, by everything we've read, everything we've heard, it was just so chaotic that we're going to try this today, but the next day we're doing something different. Yeah. And more importantly, there was no explanation as to why suddenly we're doing something differently. It was just now we're trying something else. And when everything feels random and a little bit chaotic, it's really difficult to get any sense of consistency. And I think that's representative of what he would have been as a GM of okay, we're going to stop playing friendlies in NFL stadiums, but actually, we're going to play them all in NFL stadiums, and we're not going to do it in Europe, but actually we're going to do all of them in Europe. And I just don't back him to have consistent ideas for reasons other than it's what I want to try today.
So I actually think he would have been a better technical director than a coach, but that's just because I think he was a really bad coach.
Yeah.
So I don't think he would have been a good technical director. I don't think he was a good technical director. If you look at the things that actually changed while he was technical director, we did things like adding a U16 and U18 men's national team. But really, that comes from the youth technical director, Tab Ramos, right? So Klinsmann just took the technical director job title and didn't really do anything. And
even then, sorry to jump in, but I feel like those positions were frequently vacant under Jurgen Klinsmann. Some of them remain vacant now. Some of the youth national team
that's more
coaches.
of a US soccer problem.
True.
Right?
But I'm just saying, if your job is a technical director, you should be aggravating the board until they appoint somebody. You should be harassing them until something happens.
This is my big point, is what I think Klinsmann's really, really good at is identifying problems, right? Like one of his answers in the Hercules...
Captain of hindsight, yeah.
Yeah, one of his answers in the Hercules Gomez thing is like the thing holding the US and Mexico back is that they're in CONCACAF and you're playing weaker opposition a lot, right? Brilliant, but we could appoint Klinsmann as technical director. He's not going to move us to UEFA. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he's really good at saying, here's a problem. He is proven not good at saying, and here's the solution. Well, like, I've had a lot of jobs. When I worked for the magazine, Virginia Living, my editor, who was pretty good, would always say, like, if you're going to come to me with a problem, also suggest a solution at the same time. Otherwise, you're just landing a problem on my desk.
So I know what you're saying. The thing that like frustrated me more about that is that I think he did sort of propose a solution, but he said it very quickly. And in my mind, he said it only because it furthers his reputation of they need to be pushing themselves against top tier opposition in Europe. We need to go play more friendlies in Europe against stronger opposition, which is what he did. And there was that run when it was like it was like Denmark. It was like Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands. There was one more in there, and it was like a run of playing against Italy when Josie Altidore scores against Italy. But those games, I think the reason why he says that is because that was the time when the team looked good under him, and so he can be like, well, see, I did that and we were looking good.
And also all those big European nations fielded very weakened teams against the US. And then also there's the fact that there's the UEFA Nations League now. There are far fewer away dates against European opposition. Right? Here's the other thing. He mentioned that maybe US soccer plays lots of home friendlies to make money, like we talked about earlier, right? It's just a revenue operation to try and get a bunch of people in a big stadium, have some expensive tickets, make money. Good luck trying to persuade US soccer not to do that. Yeah. Right? He didn't actually propose a solution for here's how they could make up lost revenue and still then go and play friendlies in Europe. This is what I'm saying. There's a lot of identifying problems that we all know are problems. It's not a lot of here's the solution to that problem.
But I find it even more infuriating when he is who he is and was in the position he was in. There's the question posed to him about development and why we don't have players of like a certain generation and younger players coming through, which was confusing to me because we do have younger players coming through, but whatever, side issue.
We do now, right? We're waiting for those to turn into big trees.
But he answered that But he answered that as though like he hadn't
like Richie Ledesma saplings.
But like Klinsmann answered that question as though he hadn't been the director of the team. Like I'm sorry, like I know you're making jokes, but I'm genuinely frustrated by this. That like that answer was like, well, we should be doing this and they should be doing that. It's like you had a chance, you did not do that. So to now act like, well, it was so simple. It's like that. Well, you weren't when you were in charge of this. Those players did not come through. You bear responsibility for this. You can't now say, well, you know, we could have done better and they should be doing this. And I don't know what. And to be honest, if he had even said, like, we could have done better, that would be a different thing. But there was no concession in that interview. Similar to Bruce Arena. There was no, I got this wrong. I could have done better. I could have learned from this mistake. I didn't do this. It's all, I was right. I wasn't in charge. This wasn't my fault. And it's just defending as opposed to helping.
Here's what I would say, though. If we could roll back the clock to 2011, when Bob Bradley was let go and Klinsmann was hired, we would have been better off, I think, if Klinsmann had been hired in a more technical director or general manager kind of way and just had that job with an actual coach who knew about tactics and that kind of stuff working under him. I think it's impossible now because his reputation is a little bit shot, right, in America. Like he wouldn't be welcome back. But I think at the time, if we'd hired him as a more overseeing type position and less picking the team, selecting the tactics kind of position, it would have worked out better than it did in the last few years.
This is maybe my bias because I find my frustration with Coach Klinsmann is so great that
I'm trying to separate the two and just say if we didn't have to deal with that, we could have just had the guy making big pronouncements and somebody else maybe fixing the problem.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm saying I don't think I can make that distinction. I think for me, it's like no, I know what he was as a coach, and so for me to expect him to be completely different as a technical director, I don't think that's realistic. Like, why would he be inept at one thing but super good at another?
Well, at least we would have had, essentially would have had someone at the top complaining for change, even if he's not actually able to enact it. And at least we would have had a proper coach.
But then he was able to enact change because we've heard the stories about how the reason why the playoffs were longer is because he wanted a longer season, so they made them home and away, and they stretched out the season to accommodate that desire. But imagine if he could dedicate his full-time job to just pushing for various bits of change during that period. It might have been more successful than it was. It might have been. But I go back to my original point, which is that but he was so mercurial in his decision-making that it also might have been, we're going to change to this format, and then the next week he's like, never mind, that didn't work. But
I'm just saying, I think if we could go back, he would have been better off taking that job instead of a coaching job. We would have been better off.
I think that's probably true. Unless he brought Yogi Löw with him, to your earlier point.
Yeah, maybe Yogi Löw as the US national team coach, we would have won the 2014 World Cup.
That works.
All right, ready for the next question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Eric Rosner asks, I just mentioned Bob Bradley. Eric asks, does Bob Bradley's dominance of Major League Soccer after his perceived failure in the Premier League tarnish how the English and Europeans view the strength of MLS?
My honest answer to this question is I think you have something similar, but I wrote it first, so I'm going to go with it. I doubt anyone is really paying attention is my answer to that. That I doubt any pundits or like really people of substance in England or European soccer are paying attention and seeing what Bob Bradley's done, but then thinking, but he didn't do very well at Swansea, so that's not that big of a deal.
Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, when they're on Sky Sports, they don't know that LAFC just won the Supporters' Shield. They probably don't know that Bob Bradley coaches LAFC.
They might not even remember that Bob Bradley coached Swansea. And I don't even mean that as a joke.
I think they would because they would know everything about the Premier League. But what I'm saying is they have no concept of what's happening over here.
Okay, then let me rephrase that. I can picture them being like, is that the fella who used to manage Swansea, right? Yeah.
Oh,
and like national team coach at some point? Yeah. like that's, but like, so I think that's a side issue because for me, the other thing is that like there are already preconceived ideas about Americans as both players and coaches.
Yeah.
I think there are certain people, Jesse Marsch.
You just didn't manage to change those preconceived ideas, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I think that like, those already exist, so him having success here is still going to be like, that's great, but he still didn't have success there, so it doesn't really make him more of an attractive candidate, I think, anywhere else.
I'm not big into this idea of just comparing how someone did in one league versus another league, and therefore that means this league is rubbish. I think of it more as a... especially Bob Bradley, I think of him as a coach who is constantly evolving and learning new things. And I think, honestly, part of the reason he's been so successful at LAFC is his brief experience with Swansea. It's just, a few more strings to his bow, more experience. Maybe he learned a few things. Maybe he picked up this and that. Do you know what I mean? Like, Bob Bradley is constantly improving as a coach. So LAFC just got the latest and greatest version of Bob Bradley. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just saying it's all part of a continuum of Bob Bradley's improvement.
Okay.
So he's a different coach now than he was at Swansea.
Yeah. But, I mean, to the question itself, like, does that perceive how they view the strength of Major League Soccer? I think the answer is, like, who cares to me? Because English pundits are never going to look at MLS and be like, that's the league, that's what we got to be drawing from.
Yep.
So trying to change their opinions, I'm not really that concerned about it.
Same. Same. Next question.
All right. Neil Schuett asks, my kids are 6 and 9 and they are starting to really enjoy soccer. What skills or knowledge do you think is most important for me to emphasize with them at this level?
To keep enjoying it. Yeah.
Number one, I have that soccer is fun.
Don't turn it into a chore by making them do a bunch of stuff. Let them keep enjoying it. Yeah. Make it fun.
Our friend whose son plays at a very high level, I once asked him because his son at a very young age, all he wanted to do was play soccer, and I kind of assumed, that must be the parent doing something, and the parents just said like, nope. Like, he just wants to do it every day. That's his favorite thing.
Yeah.
And I think if you encourage that, I was reading Johan Cruyff's book, and he was talking about how, like, that was the only thing to do. But
My Turn. Great
which
title.
Somehow it took me forever to realize the connection in the title. Like, I was just like, it's his turn to write a book. It took me a moment to be like, right, that whole historic famous move. But he talked about how, like, that was the only thing they did because it was the only thing to do, but it also became, like, the most fun thing because you've, like, you use a street curb as, like, a part of the field, and how do you adapt to the street curb? Like, but it made it really fun for them. And so I'm totally with you that the idea of it being a fun thing as opposed to like, go run some drills, go do this. Hey, you have to play for this team. You have to do this. Suddenly, the fun aspect of it is slightly reduced.
Okay, so what if Neil's kids, who again are 6 and 9, come to him and say, hey, Dad, can you show me something to improve my game?
Yeah.
What's a couple of things you would have Neil show them?
All right, so first of all, like, genuine response to that is like, they're not going to do that.
Okay.
And I don't mean this.
All right, but hypothetically.
No. But like, this is an important thing, is that kids are kids. They do not have an understanding of adult things.
Yeah.
So passing, for an example, is a foreign concept to a 6-year-old. Like a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old playing soccer is just going to want to dribble because there's a ball in front of them. They want to dribble and score a goal. And so they're never going to say like, hey, how do I pass better? It is incumbent upon the parent to make that stuff fun so the kids learn how to do it. So no, it's a great question, but it's the thing that like, if you want the kid to be like, how do I do scissors? You got to show them the scissors. Like, you can't be like, here's a move, they don't know what it is. If they don't know a thing exists, they're not going to ask about that thing.
So in my head, it was, I think moves are fun.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe showing them some dribbling moves would be the fun way to do it. Like, teach them something relatively easy, like a step over, maybe a Cruyff turn, and maybe a soul roll. Like, things that actually just put your foot on top of the ball and roll it. And, like, that's kind of a fun move that they might enjoy the next time they go out and play. They could show that off.
Right. And but that's you're making it fun. That's what I'm saying. Is like, but like if you're expecting your kid, like I do think there are parents who will be like, oh, well, like when he wants to know how to do that, he'll do it. But if you are saying like, isn't this cool? Isn't this a cool thing? Like my nephews want to see what the cool thing is.
Yeah.
So if you show them how to do a move that's cool, they're like, oh, that's awesome. And I think with that, if you want to teach them usable skills, if you make it into a game that's fun, but then also maybe quietly teaching them things, that's the way to do it. So for passing and receiving, I would say, like you have them play keep away, where it's like, if say you've got the 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, they've got to pass around you. You, the adult, maybe play a little bit harder of defense when they will only dribble, but when they pass the ball, suddenly you're incompetent at defending.
So you got to trick these kids.
Yeah, but it teaches them into like, oh, if I pass the ball, the defense doesn't know what to do. If I dribble a whole bunch, then I lose the ball, and now I have to chase my parent.
So you're not
down.
like explicitly teaching them that lesson, but it's just there.
But you're just making it fun, man. Yeah. And then my other one, I would say, sorry, do you have more about skills? I hijacked that one. I would say the other one is like, it's a thing that is a popular point of contention about like caring about results and participation trophies, but people who get really mad about participation trophies, in my mind, miss the point of the argument, which is that the point of playing soccer as a 6-year-old or 9-year-old, as a young kid, is development, both in terms of the game, but in terms of social, like you're teaching them to play as a team and communicate with other people. But you're also trying to help them develop. If you want them to be a good soccer player, caring about did they score a hat trick in their U6 game is way less important to like, hey, you took a corner kick. Hey, you took a goal kick. Hey, you passed the ball. Like, encouraging the development of those individual skills, way more important than whether or not they scored 3 goals in their U10 rec league game.
Yeah. It's also fun scoring a hat trick.
Also fun scoring a hat trick. That is true. But if you score a hat trick by a good combination pass, it genuinely does just feel better.
This is true. This is true. All right, more questions?
Yeah.
But first, today's show is sponsored by Talisman Caps, our friends from Minnesota.
That's right.
Do you remember which Minnesota city they're in, Taylor?
They are in St. Paul, Minnesota?
Yes, correct.
Not Minneapolis.
Yes.
Yes.
But they can get to Minneapolis easily.
I would say so, yes. They are makers of high-end, quality-made caps and gear. Talk about the gear in a moment.
Yep.
The hats, I was cleaning out my closet last night. I have many of them. I wear lots of them. But they were
like... Same time?
No, yes, once I wore 2, I think. I think it's a joke. I forget why. I think I wore the Cooligans hat twice to say that I'd worn it twice. But like I wear them so often that I have to have a number of them because I end up like leaving them in one location in my house and then I need another one, but now I don't want to walk all the way upstairs. Luckily, I have another one. But I've also enjoyed the spread of Talisman gear into like the world that isn't just hats because they have different accessories. And I was watching Extra Time this week as they were doing their Decision Day sort of coverage, and Jimmy Conrad was in there. Andrew Wiebe was hosting, as he is wont to do, and in front of Andrew Wiebe was the camping coffee mug that you and I were both admiring.
Really?
Yeah, I messaged him about it because I was like, "Ooh, I want that mug." He's got it. I'm jealous.
So he already got one. Oh, Wiebe.
It's like a little teal. It's got the support logo on it. It's a solid mug.
So this is, if you go to talismancaps.com, there's obviously a few menus you can click through. There's an accessories page, and there is the campfire mug, which I really like. I like that support local logo that Dustin designed, but I also, I don't know, there's something that it just looks really good on that campfire mug. Yeah. I don't know why.
I think
it just does.
It's not tin, but it's like the ceramicness of the mug. It's what I drank out of when I was a little kid and we went camping. And it's like, I want that, but I want it for everyday use. Speaking
of drinking, there is also the No Vino, No Party stemless wine glass with a gentleman that looks a lot like Andrea Pirlo in a Juventus jersey, holding a glass of wine,
but it's not for copyright reasons,
while striking a free kick. You've also got some coasters. You've got the Woodchuck USA Support Local 94 phone case. There's a flask. There's a hip flask.
I don't even know what to make of those words that you just said.
Well, it's got the USA 94 logo from the World Cup, but it also says Support Local.
Okay.
So it's like combined 2 of their designs.
But as a phone case.
Shall I just show you? Here's my iPad.
Yes. Okay, now I see what we're working with here. Now I see what we're working with here.
Yeah. So all kinds of accessories, great for the holidays coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Great little gifts for soccer fan friends.
It is, because if you have a friend who's already like got a bunch of jerseys or something like that, there are so many different options that are both like handmade and curated and interesting, and you're not just getting like a I don't know, I'll get him a Man United jersey or a Chelsea jersey. It's something different, or her, I should add, because they do have options that represent the women's national team as well.
There's also the vintage collection where you can get, for example, if you ever wanted a 94-95 Kaiserslautern jersey,
of course,
you can find one at talismancaps.com.
Who hasn't?
So this is like vintage stores that have become quite famous, where people will really go looking for the good stuff. Then they'll fill their store with like vintage apparel. It's essentially an online version of that. And I know Dustin and Bethany, who run Talisman, they obviously have an eye for design because they managed to design all these incredible caps that are really getting people's attention. They really have an eye for a classic vintage jersey.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of really like cool jerseys. Some really obscure ones, like the Ireland 92-93 one with the 3-stripe Adidas on the shoulder. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, so I don't know, you could click through the page and find all kinds of incredible vintage things. And then, I told you my favourite one I saw earlier, right? MLS 1996 inaugural game T-shirt.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, so San Jose versus DC, they just handed out some commemorative T-shirts. Probably at the time that didn't feel so special, but 20-odd years later, that's kind of a cool vintage thing, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So if you want to get that or any of the other products we've discussed, you can get 10% off with a minimum purchase of $35 by using the code TOTALSOCCER10. TOTALSOCCER10 all together to get 10% off at talismancaps.com.
Thank you to Talisman for sponsoring today's show. We love working with cool brands like Talisman.
We do indeed. Next question, Daryl, I will ask to you. John Martin asks, why don't players who start on the bench have their uniform on already?
I don't know.
Really?
Is the answer to this.
Okay.
Yeah. I honestly,
because you've never been benched.
I've never been. Yeah, I refuse. I walk out every time I'm benched. I honestly don't know. Like it would make sense to me to be fully dressed and ready to go because maybe there's an injury and like, hey, we need you to get in right now. Like, why have the extra minute or two where you have to like put your shin guards on, put your jersey on, all that kind of stuff? You hinted earlier that you kind of knew the answer to this. I mean, I'm honestly lost for ideas of why you're not just ready to go.
I don't know the answer. I know why I do it because I do this as well. And I have two possible explanations. The first is what I do. It's just that like when you change your clothes, it's like a change of status. And so for me, when I warm up, I will usually warm up without shin guards and without my jersey on. And then once it's about time for the game, shin guards go on, jersey goes on, and I feel like, okay, now I'm like ready to compete. Now is the time.
Okay.
And maybe it's like a reflection of how professional teams warm up in their warm-up jersey and then they change into their game jersey, and it's that feeling of like, now I'm changing into my like thing that signifies we're about to actually compete.
Okay. So it's like a mental, psychological element.
Yeah.
To it. Yeah.
I think there's that. And it's also a little bit comfort that like wearing your shin guards the whole game is not that comfortable.
Oh, you sit there getting sweaty shins,
yeah,
I guess.
wearing your jersey, like I don't know, maybe it's sweaty from warm up or something, so you wear like a lighter weight shirt until it's time to get ready.
It's a bit of freshness as well.
And then there's an element of full kit wankerdom, I think, is the other one that like if you're sitting there on the sidelines the entire game, like shin guards on, socks pulled up, jersey tucked in, ready to go, and then you do not play. Like, imagine that player in the post-match when they're high-fiving.
The top, right?
I guess you could, but if it's hot, no. So I think there's an element of just sitting there the whole game looking like you're ready to go when you're just sitting on the bench and everyone else is having casual conversations.
Oh, man. FKW is harsh because you are actually a professional player who might play in this game. You're not just some dude at the pub.
Exactly. I know. But
do you think it still looks that way?
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, I should also add that like I am the one I get made fun of a lot because I shower before games and then also after games because I like to feel like woken up and ready.
Yeah, I do it every morning just to feel fresh.
It blows my mind how people can just show up like having just woken up to play soccer. Like I need that feeling of like, okay, I am now like in game mode. I am focused up. I'm ready to go.
If a player shows up and there's yellow in the corner of their eyeballs, bench him.
Yeah, exactly. I woke up. We had a game this Sunday. The game in the morning where our goalkeeper, you can guess who it is, showed up and he like had one patch of his hair just completely sticking out. And I was like, so did you wake up like 10 minutes ago? It was like 8. It's like cool, good stuff. We're gonna have a great game. You're gonna be ready to go, I'm sure.
He's still a very good goalkeeper. When he's fully awake.
Yeah, there you go.
He's a very good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
All right, next question. You ready?
Sure.
Billy Height. Billy Height wants to talk about the Liverpool versus Red Bull Salzburg Champions League game where Liverpool went 3-0 up. Salzburg, under American coach Jesse Marsch, pulled it back to 3-3. Salah scored late, finished 4-3 to Liverpool. Billy wants to know, was that good tactics by Marsch or an off night by Liverpool, or is it that things can be two things?
I guess if I had to answer for those options, I would say things can be two things, but I'm also inclined to say like kind of neither. Like I think it was bad tactics by Marsch that he then corrected, and then I think it was Liverpool playing their game well, but then Salzburg adjusted to exploit vulnerabilities in what Liverpool do.
Yes.
And then I think Liverpool adjused back.
Okay, so I agree with you that it was bad tactics by Marsch that he then adjusted, not least because if you look at how the scoring went, Liverpool were 3-0 up, Red Bull Salzburg were 3-0 down after 36 minutes. Jesse Marsch got this wrong to begin with and then fixed it in a big way that was able to create the 3-3 comeback. But then essentially, I think all the effort that went into the comeback, they were tired and sloppy. And if you look at the winning goal, there's like a couple of sloppy clearances. And then number 14, whose name is very tough to pronounce, tried to dribble at the top of his own box, got tackled. Liverpool punished them, right? So should we get into the specifics of what Marsch got wrong and how he fixed it?
We should. I'm not laughing at you for not being able to pronounce the player's name. I did find myself looking at this Red Bulls team and being like, are they designed for me to be like have difficulty understanding the names?
Challenge, right?
It really is.
These players will probably be very famous in the future because that's really what's going on with Red Bull, right? They have these players at Salzburg. They'll maybe eventually go to Leipzig. They'll become some big names. We're going to find the hardest to pronounce collection of names in the entire world. That's their criteria. Are you young? Are you talented? Can you like run fast and press hard? Is your name really hard to pronounce? And in the case of number 14, Jabajlai, I believe that is the case.
Well done, sir.
I wrote it down, so I wanted to at least have a go at it.
Well done. I appreciate that you did
so
it.
What did Jesse Marsch get wrong? Why were Liverpool 3-0 up after 36 minutes?
So he, much the way you had to go, Jesse Marsch had to go with a 4-2-2-2-2-2-2-2-2. One day I'll get the twos right. 4-4-2 defensively, but the idea was like being compact, like not necessarily focusing on possession, but trying to play direct, trying to counter Liverpool.
Trying to press, right? They were doing the classic Red Bull press high, go after them, win the ball back, then transition quickly.
Yeah. But the problem there is that when you're playing in that 4-4-2, you, like in order to not get overwhelmed, if you're going to press, you've kind of got to like have more numbers in the middle, and so you don't have as much presence out wide, which is where Liverpool like to attack via Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, and that's exactly what they did early and often in Robertson the first 30 to 40 minutes of this game. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. The freedom, like unmarked, to just come into the box. I think that's a problem with the 4-2-2-2.
Yeah.
Right? There's no width like in your midfield or your forwards, so the fullbacks can get kind of overwhelmed.
Right. And then I think the other issue was that when Red Bull would try to play, Salzburg would try to play, it's easier because there's too many Red Bull teams now. Because of where their players were in their defensive shape, it didn't then smoothly allow them to transition into a counterattack because they were trying to play very vertical, very direct. But if you've got sort of 2-2-2-2, like you can play in a straight line, but you don't have a lot of variability. Yeah. And I think the adjustment he makes is going to a 4-1-3-2 sort of. And with that, you can then have kind of wide players if you need to.
And they can come central if they need to as well,
But you can also have more of a diamond shape, so your 6 can play to your 10 can play it forward, and now you do have a kind of like direct line of passing with variability on the sides.
So that was the change he made, right? I think they were maybe 2-0 down at the time, but then Liverpool score a third, but they immediately make it 3-1 in the 39th minute after Jesse Marsch's change, right? And then there's the big halftime team talk, which became famous.
My wife just texted me about it as we were recording, And
it's essentially Jesse Marsch in like mostly German with a bit of English thrown in, which I always find like really enjoyable. I think the key phrase was like, it's not a friendly, it's a Champions League match. We've only fouled them twice. It's essentially press harder, right? Because what they were doing in the first half, they were doing the Red Bull pressing game, which kind of, and they were counter-attacking vertically and quickly, like you said, kind of guarantees a high-tempo game. But Liverpool are really adept at that, right? And you saw the first couple of goals was a lot of Liverpool just very quickly moving the ball. Essentially, Liverpool's quality was always going to win out in a high-tempo game. So if you're going to go high-tempo...
You're fighting fire with fire, but the other fire is a volcano.
So you've also got to be kind of rough and tough and just physically dominate as well, right? And if you're not committing fouls...
You're a bigger volcano.
You're not physically dominating. Yeah.
So, I guess. Is that how volcanoes work? A bigger volcano cancels out a smaller volcano?
Definitely.
Totally.
Yeah, that's definitely how volcanoes are all competing.
This is where I say that I am a trained geologist.
But anyway, so that halftime team talk, I actually think, even though I think Leander Schalakens...
I'm not a trained geologist.
Leander Schalakens noted it's kind of a marketing exercise from Red Bull because that's the impression they want to put across.
Yeah.
But it seemed kind of effective. Maybe the tactical change was more effective, though.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the halftime team talk for a second, because the headline I've seen, but not clicked, because it tended to be from papers I didn't want to click on, was like Klopp saying, I would be furious if... Like, what did you make of that? What was that about?
So Klopp was saying, if Liverpool released footage of my halftime team talks, I would leave the team.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, like, was that like a hyperbolic statement, or do you think he really was like, that's a betrayal of locker room trust?
I think it's weird to Klopp that things that go on inside the private locker room are made public, and I think he was just expressing his displeasure with that very idea.
Man, okay, that makes more sense.
He doesn't want it to become a thing.
And I wonder if that is like a thing that only happens because, not necessarily because Jesse Marsch gave an amazing halftime team talk, but because he's American. Because in the United States, it is way more common for media to be in the locker room, and we hear routinely about how strange that is for foreign players coming into MLS to have press in the locker room, to even have the coach in the locker room.
I've got to guess, like, I take Leander's point that it's very much a marketing exercise from Red Bull to release that video to celebrate what was ultimately a 4-3 defeat, but it's to celebrate the comeback part. They definitely would have asked Jesse Marsch's permission. Yeah. And Jesse Marsch, I think maybe because he's an American coach and maybe the locker room isn't as like, it isn't so sacrosanct like it is that the right word? Sacred, like it is in Europe.
I like them both.
Jesse Marsch is probably like, put it out there.
And I think
get some retweets.
And I think this game, despite being a 4-3 loss, despite him getting it wrong in the beginning, is like a good one for Jesse Marsch's resume because he makes this tactical adjustment that pays dividends. They bring it back to 3-3. He has the halftime team talk that is passionate, but it's also worth noting from everything I have read, they have not played this 4-1-3-2 the entire season. They have played sometimes with the back three, they've played sometimes with the back four, but with that back four, it's usually 4-4-2, it's usually 4-2-2-2, sometimes it's like a 4-2-3-1, but this kind of system of having like a single number 6 with a number 10 and sort of a diamond, not a thing they've really gone for at all this season.
They must have practiced it, though, to be able to switch to it so efficiently mid-game. I also want to highlight 2 other little changes he made. As part of the rearrangement into the 4-1-3-2, he put Minamino, he moved him like from the rightish position to being essentially the number 10, right?
Yeah.
And I think your theory was that then when you play vertical, then the number 10 is who it kind of goes through to keep playing vertical. And Minamino was so good and lively. I believe he scores the second goal on the volley. It's that beautiful volley. He's one of those players. Takumi Minamino, kind of hard to pronounce, probably going to be super famous in the nearest future.
I would say so.
Then, when it gets to 3-2 after that Minamino goal, he brings on Haaland, the young striker. Haaland scores the equaliser within 2 minutes of coming on the field. So 2 really good, like almost immediately effective changes from Jesse Marsch. But then it's 3-3, maybe the adrenaline drops, things get a little sloppy, and as I pronounced correctly earlier, Szoboszlai makes that mistake, and Liverpool punish them. Finishes 4-3 to Liverpool. So it's actually not that great from Jesse Marsch because he ultimately lost the game, but it was a really good effort that I think brings him some attention.
I think a 4-3 loss they would have probably been okay with before the game started, is my guess. Certainly when they were 3-0 down, they would have taken a 4-3 loss. I would say so. I also wanted to add, it's worth noting that they were missing Andre Ramalho, who's a defender who'd started, I believe, every single game for them until this one. Also, leading goal scorer Sekou Keita, I believe, was sick and thus had to miss this game as well. He was on the bench, but I don't believe played. So missing like one of his most reliable defenders and his leading goal scorer, again, pretty commendable that they got the result they did.
And also, it's worth saying that it's enjoyable when teams go at Liverpool because Liverpool have the capability to play through it, and then it becomes an exciting game, right? The usual blueprint is kind of everybody sit back and defend and see if they can break us down, right? So to go at Liverpool like that and nearly pull it off, even though it's ultimately unsuccessful, it's really exciting. Like, Jesse Marsch wouldn't be getting the same attention and Salzburg wouldn't be getting the same attention if they'd gone in a deep, low block and lost 1-0, right? Because it's just less impressive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They probably would have taken it.
Jesse Marsch in the Champions League. I love it.
I'll take it. I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay, speaking of the Champions League, Taylor, Greg Slater has a question. Greg asks, during BR Live's post-match Champions League coverage this past Tuesday, I heard Tim Howard, presumably in studio, right, BR Live, comment that Gonzalo Higuain...
You don't know where Greg was watching. He could have been watching with Timmy. They're best friends.
They're just on the couch next
Sit on the couch. He chose not to ask him this question, but instead email us about it while sitting next to him. Strange choice, Greg.
Just like Colleen Rooney. So Greg's asking about Tim Howard's comment on BR Live that Higuain's finish for Juventus against Leverkusen, it was the first goal in a 3-0 win, was, quote, a striker's finish, unquote. What does he mean by that? What is a striker's finish?
Okay. I am not sure if there is like an actual definition of a striker's finish. Okay. I wasn't sure before I give my interpretation.
You can open the dictionary right now. It's not going to be in there.
No, it will not. But there have been incidents in the past where I was like, there's no term for this, but here's my explanation, and I would give you my 10-minute explanation, and then Darryl would be like, well, here's the definition from like something, and I'd be like, oh, okay, never mind. The way I would put it is essentially...
Do I well actually use sometimes?
Every now and then. I think everybody does. I'm very mindful of when I say actually for that reason, but yes.
Do you know where I get my water from?
From a well, actually?
From a well, actually.
I see what you did. I see what you did there. I anticipated your bad joke. How are you not a father? How do you have dad jokes and yet you do you have secret kids? Do you have kids somewhere, Darryl? So you've been hiding them for years? A striker's finish, I would say, my kind of understanding of it is a striker's finish comes from a complete striker. So I always go straight to like Ronaldo or somebody like that, original Ronaldo. But the way I can explain it like succinctly is it's an efficient and deadly strike. And in this goal, you kind of see everything that to me makes it this kind of like complete perfect striker's goal in that it's Higuain tracking a loose ball in the air that's kind of he's already battled for. So it's
like a long direct ball that like Jonathan Tah is the Leverkusen defender. He kind of gets to it, but it pops up in the air. So there's a moment of just complete chaos and confusion for everybody.
But and we've seen that, we both experienced that, where you kind of go up for a head and you come down, you don't know where it is, and you spin around and you're not sure. That Higuain tracks it and is aware of where the ball is. Right there, that's like that predatory vision of a striker and the awareness. Then he brings it down neatly with one touch, and then also sets up his shot at the same motion. So he brings it down but sets it up to shoot with his second touch, which again shows you the technical control but creativity and awareness that you've got to know exactly how to do that. Then his shot is low, powerful to one of the corners, and occurs in a very, very short amount of time, everything we're talking about. So just that he does all of that, it's such minimal movement, and that's not just an Higuain joke. It's just how it's efficiency of movement to score a goal, doing as little as possible, or seeming to do as little as possible, when in actuality you're doing 46 things at once.
I would agree with everything you just said, and I would add that it's like an instinct, right? If you look at that, if that was me, who is very much not a striker, I'd be thinking, all right, let's try and bring this ball down, and then we'll think about trying to do something with it. Higuain spots that there is an opportunity here, and he pounces.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know what the word is, just lethal, vicious, ruthless. Ruthless is the word. That ruthless instinct to be there's a little bit of space here. I might be outside the box, but there's a little bit of space. There's a shooting opportunity here, and I'm pretty confident I can put this in the bottom corner. And you just take that opportunity fast as you can, right?
You know when a striker has that shot and it just gets pushed wide or just goes barely wide, and you're like, oh, I thought he would score there. That's because you have a striker like this who does score that goal. So when Robert Lewandowski gets this shooting opportunity, you think, oh, he's going to score that because he has that striker's finish, that striker's ability, and that I think is what we saw from Higuain in this one. The other one that I would say is helpful for me at least in making sense of it is, if you'll forgive me, the very basic definition of the difference between parkour and free running. Yeah, you're welcome for this.
I didn't know there was a difference.
Parkour or free running is basically getting from point A to point B in the most creative way possible. Yeah. And I equate that with a slaloming Lionel Messi dribbling run. That's
free running?
Yeah, that's free running. Parkour is essentially getting from point A to point B in the quickest route possible. It's just usually there's a building in the way. So
didn't you just say the same thing twice?
No, because one is the most creative way of you're showing off all the different things you can do, just kind of going over the table.
So which one's the most creative way?
Free running.
Free running.
Parkour is doing it in the quickest route.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're just sort of instead of going around the building, you go over the building.
Yeah.
And here it's just sort of he does all of these things as quickly as possible to put the ball in the net before people can react.
So it's a parkour finish?
It's a parkour finish. A striker's finish is a parkour finish.
The other possibility is that Tim Howard was just struggling for something to say and just said, oh, that's a striker's finish.
Because it's a cliche.
Yeah.
That's definitely in the cliches book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely in the cliche book. And it may be that Tim Howard's such an experienced soccer guy that to him, striker's finish means all the things we just said. And he's just got this shorthand for it, striker's finish. But to me, it's much better on the broadcast to explain it a little more than just saying it's a striker's finish.
Here's how you can know.
I'm not doubting Tim Howard's knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm doubting his judgment on how much he needed to explain. Also, there's probably an ad break coming.
Also definitely that. But we haven't seen the clip, and I would say this, that if it goes in and it's kind of a quieter, oh, that's a striker's finish. That to me is him saying a thing versus him as a goalkeeper having experienced that. If he was ooh, that's a striker's finish. That tells you right there he's saying a genuine thing of oh, that's such a frustrating goal from a goalkeeper. It's so perfectly hit. That's a striker's finish versus yeah, it's a striker's finish. Commercial? We go to commercial now? Then you know.
Sell some Coca-Cola. All right, you ready for the final question of the day?
We did it. We did do it.
Sean McNamara asks, who plays the most Champions League minutes this campaign as a cap-tied American?
Yes.
So very specific wording. Is it Tyler Adams for RB Leipzig? Is it Tim Weah for Lille? Is it Christian Pulisic for Chelsea, or is it Serginho Dest for Ajax, or is the total 0?
The total will not be 0.
Why not?
I feel confident that somebody will play. Somebody will play somewhere.
Somebody will play a minute somewhere. And Dest has played 90 for Ajax against Valencia, but not as a cap-tied American. I like that Sean was very specific in his wording.
And that he does seem to be the obvious answer. The question is just, is he going to be a cap-tied American? Yeah. And I really don't feel comfortable speculating or guessing.
So do we both agree that if he becomes a cap-tied American at some point in the next few months, Serginho Dest will play the most minutes out of Adams, Weah, Pulisic, Dest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the reason why...
We're banking a lot on Mazraoui not getting back in the team, but... Yeah, it feels the right bet right now. Yeah,
and I would say, like, yes, I would agree with that for the same reason that my answer, excluding Dest, is Tyler Adams, and I think it's because
I got the same.
Despite injuries and other players have come into form for Leipzig, this is why I was going to be confused and why I switched to Salzburg as opposed to Red Bull earlier. Is because despite injury, one full game for him like rockets him up the charts. Whereas with Timothy Weah coming back from injury with Christian Pulisic in the role he's been playing for Chelsea,
and Weah wasn't necessarily in the Lille first team. Right? Yeah.
So with Pulisic especially, Chelsea played 2 Champions League games so far. He's been on the bench for one, not on the squad for the other. So if he continues those 10 to 15 minute cameos, say he makes 5 or 6 of them, but then Tyler Adams starts one game, automatically he's going to be at like 85 minutes.
So it's really fitness. Unless the Adams injury is worse than we thought and he's just constantly out and out and out and out, there's still 5 Champions League group stage games to go. And it goes like 4. We already gone through 2. Yep. Oh dear. The math is getting tighter. But still, I would put money on maybe Tyler Adams being fit enough to play at least one 90-minute set and then maybe a couple of 30 minutes, and already he's ahead of everybody, right?
Yeah. So I think Dest, if he's cap tied. And the other reason for that is because right now Leipzig, similar to Ajax, and I would say Chelsea maybe, but like are likely to go deeper in the tournament than Lille, as an example. So Lille maybe have the group stage games. Maybe they make it out of the group, but more than likely they don't if past is precedent. Whereas we could see Ajax make a deep run. We could see Leipzig, again, with their current form and the way they've been in the Bundesliga, make a deep run. Maybe Chelsea, that seems less likely, and that's another reason why I don't think...
And it's just tough to see Pulisic getting a starting spot like really, really regularly anytime super soon.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think Chelsea maybe potentially not making it out of the group stage or not making a very deep run, combined with Pulisic only getting kind of cameo minutes so far. I think he'll get some minutes, which is why I didn't say 0, but I don't think he'll get nearly as many as Tyler Adams if he recovers in time.
So we're saying Dest if he becomes captain.
So many caveats and coulds and shoulds and maybes impossible.
We've actually answered the question, but we're saying Dest if he becomes cap-tied, and if not, then Adams.
Yes.
Is that an acceptable answer, or are we kind of dodging the core of the question? Like, is Sean asking us to choose?
No, I mean, we've answered Dest. It's just I don't know if he's going to be a cap-tied American, and I feel really uncomfortable talking about it.
I'm going to say Dest.
Okay.
Which is essentially me saying he's going to choose America.
All right.
That's my very optimistic answer.
So I'm assuming between now and when that would happen, there's probably one more game. There's probably one more round of Champions League games at least, I'd say. So maybe he'll have 3 games at most, 3 more group stage games, Dest will, as a cap-tied American. I still think he probably plays one of those. He's already at 90.
Well, with the 90 against Valencia retroactively count?
No, because he wasn't cap-tied.
Because he wasn't cap-tied at the time. Oh.
Now I'm making rules, baby.
Okay, if you're making a rule, I'm going to say Tyler Adams.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, because Mesraoui coming back. So there's a chance Dest loses his starting spot.
All right,
I'm all in on Tyler Adams then.
All right.
Yeah,
that's
Tyler
fine.
Adams, currently 0 minutes. He's coming back soon, right? I haven't heard anything that says he's had a recurrence of the injury or anything like that.
All right. Knocking on wood.
All right. We answered a lot of questions.
We did.
If you would like to ask us a question, totalsoccershow.com/questions. totalsoccershow.com/questions is the URL. There's a form you can fill out. We get the question. If we like it, we answer it.
We do.
You can also support Total Soccer Show financially, help us keep on going. If you go to totalsoccershow.com/join, if you subscribe at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month. So totalsoccershow.com/join, $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer a question a month on the show.
And just quick question of clarification. What happens if you subscribe at any level?
If you subscribe at any level, then you join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, and we give you a talented young player to keep your eye on.
That is correct. And we have...
look at this in front of me.
What? How did that happen? We have several scouting reports to get to. We still have more in the queue. We'll catch up on those this week. But for right now, we've got several reports, a lot of young Americans, some non-Americans doing things. We'll start with Josh Dollar, scouting Blake Bodley, the 21-year-old American midfielder for the University of Washington. Blake has been a rock for the number 7 ranked UW this year and has the production to prove it. On top of his 4 goals and 4 assists, he was named College Soccer News National Player of the Week on October 7th for providing the assist for the golden goal win against number 2 Stanford, and then for grabbing the only goal in a win over Cal.
I learned most of my college soccer news from the scouting reports.
I learned, yes. I was going to say all, but no, it's not quite all.
Joseph Meadows is scouting Azrael Gonzalez, the 18-year-old American midfielder, for the Tacoma Defiance. That's Seattle's USL team.
It's weird because I heard from Jurgen Klinsmann that all 18-year-olds are playing college soccer, so I'm not sure what to make of that.
There must be some mistake.
Weird.
Joseph says, Azrael Gonzalez had a difficult season for Tacoma. He missed 3 months with a broken foot, but returned to action in September, made several appearances for the Defiance. He will likely be a central part of Tacoma's plans for next season, which would push him closer to the 100-game mark that Seattle front office uses as a measuring stick to see who is ready for first-team looks. I didn't know that.
Nor did I. That's why we like the Scouting Network.
Isn't that a lot of games?
It really is. He's on 45 right now, I believe Joseph included in his report.
100 games. Does that maybe include Development Academy games
that
as well?
Be.
Otherwise, you could be like, hey, you got to spend 4 years in USL before.
I mean,
maybe
if you start as a 15-year-old.
Maybe Klinsmann was right.
Todd Brennan scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, a 21-year-old American defender on loan at Stoke from Tottenham, and once again, not playing in college. 21-year-old. I don't know what to make of this. After starting in a 1-0 loss to fellow relegation strugglers Huddersfield, I'm starting to see a pattern. Maybe he should be playing college. CCV went the distance first in Stoke's surprising 2-1 victory over formerly top-of-the-table Swansea. It was the 5th straight start in league play for Carter-Vickers after initially struggling for playing time since his loan move. While CCV seems to have earned the trust of manager Nathan Jones, there is still much speculation surrounding Nathan Jones' tenure as manager. There were reports last week that Stoke were turned down by Chris Hughton, so it'll be interesting to see if Stoke look to make changes during the international break, and if they do, what that will mean for CCV long term.
So further proof that Chris Hughton's a smart man.
Yes.
Not taking that job. Russell Varner is scouting Alex Mendez, the 18-year-old American midfielder for young Ajax. Russell says Mendez is integrating himself into the young Ajax lineup, having appeared in 7 of the club's 9 games, mostly from the bench. He was also called into Jason Kreis's 25-man U23 camp. They play El Salvador on October 15th, but the match will apparently not be broadcast. So Russell plans to imagine Mendez netting a hat-trick.
It's a safe way to go.
Do you think we'll get a scouting report of the imaginary Mendez hat-trick?
I hope not. I was about to say I hope so, then I thought about it realistically. No, I don't want that. Ben Sundstrom scouting Joshua Pinnedath. Too mean?
Correct. It was the correct response.
Joshua Pinnedath, the 17-year-old Indian-American winger for Ajax. Joshua received his first young Ajax minutes on September 16th in a 2-0 win against young PSV. He subbed on in the 18th minute due to a teammate's injury, played against fellow youth national teamers Richie Ledesma and Chris Gloucester. Since then, he has started making substitute appearances early in matches, generally appearing as a right winger, and as I said earlier, remained eligible for both the US and for India.
All right.
And I'm assuming for the Netherlands as well, given that he's 17.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's got any Dutch citizenship.
We shall see.
I think I saw on Twitter this morning that Pinnedath played for Ajax's first team in like an international break friendly against Heerenveen.
Interesting.
You know how Pulisic was doing that back in the day for Dortmund? Jeff Markman is scouting Reece Nelson. You have a question?
No, I was just going to say, I forget how long some of these people have been around, that like Pinnedath feels like we've been talking about for a super long time, and I was really disappointed not to see in the U23s, and like, oh, maybe his development has stagnated a little bit of the U20s, then I realized he's 17.
Jeff Markman is getting Reece Nelson, the 19-year-old English attacker for Arsenal. Jeff says Nelson grabbed his first senior goal and added an assist in the Gunners' 5-0 win in the Carabao Cup against Nottingham Forest. Followed that up with a start and an assist in a 4-0 victory over Standard Liège in Europa League group play. He then suffered a knee injury that will keep him out of the squad for 2 to 3 weeks and forced him to withdraw from the England under-21 squad.
Selfish knees. Elijah Chappell scouting Joe Willock, 19-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Can I just say the Arsenal?
If you want.
Just to make people mad. The Arsenal Gunners. The Arsenal Cannons.
Bang.
Bang, 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 cannon. Joe started in a central attacking midfield role in Arsenal's 3-0 win over Eintracht Frankfurt. This is what happens when we go past the hour mark. He also scored the opener when he curled a deflected shot into the far corner of the goal during the Arsenal counterattack. During the Arsenal counterattack.
And the Arsenal counterattack.
Bang, bang, bang. Joe scored his 3rd goal of the season during Arsenal's Europa League match against Standard Liège. A lot of scoring against Standard Liège happening. Willock picked up a rebound and placed it into the far corner to put Arsenal up 3-0 in the 22nd minute. Joe recently signed a new long-term contract at Arsenal, so fans do not need to worry about him going all Serge Gnabry on us.
Jonathan Feller is scouting Moses Nyman, the very talented 15-year-old American midfielder for DC United. Jonathan says DC has signed Moses Nyman to a homegrown contract. At 15, Nyman becomes the 2nd youngest player to ever sign with DC United. I think Quaranta was maybe, or Bobby Convey. I don't know.
My goodness, Daryl.
Jonathan isn't sure who the youngest was, but it's certain that he had a vibrant career and wasn't a letdown in any way. I've just realised it's Freddie.
There it is. I thought you were joking for a minute. All right. I'm just going to let Daryl sit in that one for a moment. Kaz Tidrick scouting Robbie Mertz. It really is. It's one of those Wikipedia game things where if you get a name in your head right away, it's really difficult to get it out of there, even if it's like, this young Nigerian player. And I'm like, Centino Quaranta. Like, it's really tough. Kaz Tidrick scouting Robbie Mertz, the 22-year-old American midfielder for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. After notching an assist on a corner against Memphis earlier in September, Robbie went the full 90 in the Hounds' 2-1 victory at Loudoun United. Robbie looked solid in a slightly less attacking role, but did pick up a yellow card that caused him to miss Saturday's home finale versus Atlanta United 2 as a result of yellow card accumulation. I believe they have at least one game, maybe two more games still to play in the regular season. Then we'll see what happens.
Guy Jedwab is scouting the aforementioned Serge Gnabry, 23-year-old German wide forward for Bayern Munich, who's not good enough for Tony Pulis.
Arsenal fans, I'm going to say this. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Guy Jedwab says Gnabry scored over half the goals in Bayern Munich's 7-2 win over Spurs in Champions League play. The first was a solo run that blew past Serge Aurier and wrong-footed Toby Alderweireld. His second came 2 minutes later. His third came in the 82nd minute when he exploited Aurier trying to set an offside trap in his own half and again outpaced Alderweireld to burst through on goal. Finally, in the 87th minute, he ran into a pocket of space, had time to clinch the 7th and final goal. On his way out the door, he tweeted, "North London is red because once a gunner, always the gunner."
That's so many burns on Tottenham. I don't really know what to make of that one from Serge Gnabry. I saw, if you'll forgive me, I don't know if this is weird. So I want to know.
Forgive you all the times you've asked.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know if this is strange, but to me it bothered me that when Spurs lost 3-0 this past weekend, the commentator at the end of it said something like, "And this is a Spurs team that have now conceded 10 goals in the last 2 games." And I guess for some reason I was like, well, yeah, they conceded 7. That's not, it's not as though they haven't conceded 21 goals in 3 games. When you concede 7 and if you concede 1 the next game, it's still technically correct when you're 8 goals against in the last 2 games.
It could have been 0-0 against Brighton.
Exactly.
They conceded 7 goals in their last 2 games.
That's what I'm saying. It's just such a weird statistic to go for. It's how this is misleading. I understand it helps you build a narrative.
They're just trying to fill the air.
There we go. There we go. Striker's finish. Philip Andriani scouting Andre Green, 21-year-old winger on loan at Preston North End from Aston Villa. Green didn't feature once for Preston in 4 September matches in Cup or League play.
He featured 10 times? No, it was less than once.
Well, so far this season, he started twice in the League Cup and has had 3 championship appearances from the bench for a total of fewer than 90 minutes.
Nice.
Thank you.
Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, 23-year-old American midfielder on loan at Atlanta. On loan at Atlanta from Bournemouth. I got there. Hyndman has been a consistent starter for Atlanta, says Richie, due partially to the quality of his performances and partially to the injury to Ezequiel Barco. He got the game winner against San Jose in late September, played as the left attacker in Atlanta's 3-4-2-1 formation. Barco returned to the lineup on the final day of the regular season. In this house, we call it decision day. But Hyndman still got the start, this time as a central mid in a 3-1-4-2.
If the mythological figure Atlas were on loan at Atlanta from Atalanta, would that be the most confusing sentence you could come up with right there? I feel like it's up there.
Yeah, especially if they ended up in some sort of group stage with the team Atlas from Mexico.
There we go. Now we're extending it. I like this. Well done, sir.
Madrid.
There we go. See? This needs to be a group. I like this plan.
And if we did it old American style, it would be Atlanta at Atalanta.
Oh, boy. It is definitely a mark that we've passed the hour mark.
It sure is.
This seems to happen near the end of scouting reports for whatever reason.
So once again, to support the show and join the Scout Network, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. I've been promising for 3 weeks or so that I will update and make new scouting assignments. There are people who've emailed and said, hey, I'm waiting for my scouting assignment. There was definitely a thing where I was in hospital for a whole week, which set me back. I just want to apologise for not getting to that sooner and to promise that I will make scouting assignments this week. So if you've sent me an email recently, you will get your player this week. If you email, even in the next couple of days, Daryl at totalsoccershow.com, DARYL, only one L, at totalsoccershow.com. Tell me you're waiting for a player if you've already joined the Scouting Network. I will get it to you this week. I promise. 3 promises in a row. That makes it happen.
And Sincere was promising things to listeners, but not me. I was instead focused on, but if we're incorporating mythology, then I want it to be Atalanta at Atlanta, but then Atlanta playing Atlas in Atlantis.
You got to find it first. You've got an away game in Atlantis.
I mean, I'm assuming either they've surfaced and you're playing like around the ocean, or you're going underground, in which case you got to get some scuba tanks.
Imagine getting your schedule and your first 2 games were away to Atlantis and away to El Dorado.
You playing the NASL.
On that note, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Today is Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow with our USA versus Cuba CONCACAF Nations League preview. We hope you'll join us, and we'll talk to you soon.